What up, y'all? Welcome back to the Pick and Roll podcast on another episode of Indy-Analysis. Today, we're talking about the Brooklyn Nets. I'm your co-host, Alan J. Pandian, and we got the interim co-host, Coach Kyle Curry, and then we got a special guest, Mr. Jackson Shelby. How you guys doing today?
I was really hoping I was going to get to say the what up, y'all, since I was going to say, but
Shelb, how you doing today?
Pretty good.
First appearance on the Pick and Roll podcast.
First appearance.
Yes, sir.
It's long overdue. So let's just dive right into the Brooklyn Nets. They were the 7th seed in the East, 44-38. And obviously we could easily get into the numbers and the on-court stuff, but we're going to focus more on the outside headlines. We're going to focus a little bit on the on-court stuff, but we're going to talk a lot more about the big headlines.
Yeah.
And we're going to start with the prime rotation, as we always do. They had Kyrie Irving at point guard, Seth Curry, Bruce Brown, Kevin Durant, Nick Claxton. That was their starting five. And then they had Goran Dragic off the bench, Patty Mills. Joe Harris was injured, so they had Cam Thomas, DeAndre Bemery, Darren Sharp kind of play that role. And then James Johnson and Andre Drummond, along with Blake Griffin at that center kind of spot. So, Shelb, I'm going to pass it to you. What you kind of think of their lineup, just first initial thoughts?
Obviously they have big names like Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, but I think one of the biggest unknowns about the Nets is what Ben Simmons is going to do next year. So honestly, I think if Ben Simmons decides to play, this can be a really good team, obviously, and potentially a championship winning team. But the thing with Ben Simmons is you don't really know. So one of the things about the Nets is that they don't really have a defense at all. So I think if you bring Ben Simmons in, obviously he's a great defensive player, and he can guard 1 through 5 basically. So I think if you bring him in and potentially a few other defenders that we can get, I think that solves most of the problems that they have.
And kind of going with that, they only had like 3 to 4 plus defenders. That was including Ben Simmons, and that kind of also speaks to their depth. And obviously they're very star reliant in Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. With Kyrie being out half the season, their regular season stats weren't as good as they could have been. But just looking at playoff stats, when Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving were not on the court, their net rating, the Nets net rating, dropped by nearly 10 points, which is like a tremendous loss without having either of them on the court. So they had Patty Mills, Goran Dragic, and Joe Harris, who was injured, but those two and Andre Drummond off the bench. They none of those guys are really plus defenders. They can all score in some way, shape, or form, and they can all do something that kind of makes them valuable, but they're not they're not really a 6-man role or a good defender. So I kind of want to pass it to Coach Curry. You have any thoughts about their lineup?
I think that they needed a strong presence. Like Shelb said, like they got big names. Like their roster to me wasn't in question. Even last year, they were built like a championship team. The biggest question before all the COVID stuff, before Kyrie wasn't playing, the question was, can Steve Nash coach the team? And then coming into last year with COVID and Kyrie and then James Harden, there was, I don't know what was in the water in Brooklyn, but this is another year, like the third year in a row, where it's not going to be about basketball for the Nets. Like, where are these guys' heads at? Like, where can Steve Nash get control of the team? Is Kyrie going to be committed to the team? Does Kevin Durant want to be there? What's up with Ben Simmons at all? Is Joe Harris is going to be able to hit a shot? Like, even when he was playing, he couldn't hit a shot the last time, not this past season, but the last time he was in the playoffs against the Bucks, where they were saying, well, this guy's supposed to be a 40% shooter, supposed to be an X factor. Can he hit a shot? So when he comes back, does Patty Mills have a lot left in the tank? They got. I know you're going to touch on this a little bit later, but they have, a couple more guys they got. But I think the questions are always going to be like, who's going to be on the floor, and can the guy who's supposed to be running the show, on the bench and in the locker room, can he handle that responsibility?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of building off of that, the Nets, their offense was mainly give the ball to Kevin and Kyrie and let them go score. And
clear out.
Yeah, clear out, pretty much. So I looked up some stats, and over 16% of their plays were isolation plays, which, if you think about it, the plays kind of deteriorate. This is just straight up ISO from the start of the possession. It's just straight up ISO. If you think about it, they may run pistol action into an isolation, and that is not included in this percentage. So it may be even like 50% or 40% ISOs just for Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. So that the 60% of ISOs were just design plays from the start, and they ranked third in the league, but they only ranked 16th in field goal percentage, and that kind of speaks to the lack of creativity per se with Steve Nash's coaching style. And I know we're going to get into this, but I just don't think Steve Nash is the right coach for the Brooklyn Nets right now. He doesn't have the respect of the locker room. He's not the best coach in terms of calling plays and managing the game, and just kind of managing the game is the best way to put that. But so I think maybe we'll talk about this later, obviously. Maybe moving off him might be the best decision for the Nets going forward. So let's talk about the off-court issues, and let's just say address the elephant in the room, KD's trade request. And recently he just put some ultimatums on the Nets ownership, Joe Tsai. He said that if Joe Tsai wants him to come back to Brooklyn, they have to fire Sean Marks, the GM, and Steve Nash, the head coach. And I'm gonna start with Shelb. What do you think of that?
Honestly, I think they should do it. I think keeping Kevin Durant is worth it. Trying to build a team around him, trying to get some depth to go with him. I think they can make it into a great team.
I mean, the sad reality of the NBA is that, like Shelb said, it's worth it. You give up a coach, and coaches are honestly a dime a dozen. At the end of the day, there aren't going to be too many more players in history of basketball, on the planet, that are going to be as good and as talented as Kevin Durant. You're not going to have another guy who's 7 feet tall. Bill Simmons, He has a quote that says, four quarters don't equal a dollar. Mm-hmm. In professional sports. It means you have a player that's that talented that he can be that dollar. Like, even if you get, 4 special players that you think can equal him, they're not touching. So to give him up, you're not gonna get another one back. So I think it's something you really got to consider.
Yeah, I'm gonna propose this situation to you guys. So let's say, we've seen that Brooklyn hasn't accepted any trade offers as of late for Kevin Durant. What happens if, let's say, they don't fire Sean Marks and Joe Tsai and they don't trade Kevin Durant? What do you think will happen? Do you think KD's going to sit out the next season, or how do you think KD will react to that information?
I mean, I don't think KD is going to pull a Ben Simmons and just sit out, but he definitely won't want to be there, and I don't think he'll definitely be putting everything he has into the team. I think he'll probably try to figure a way out or something. I don't know.
I think we saw a couple seasons ago, and even last year, that players can not play, can quit on a team while still playing. We watched James Harden do it in I wanted to say Kentucky. I don't know why. Kentucky. In Houston. We saw James Harden do it in Houston, where he was still playing. He didn't sit out. He didn't fake an injury, but you saw when he was out there, he clearly wasn't in shape, clearly wasn't focused. He had a game or two where he came out and said, yep, I can still do this, and I'm not going to because I don't want to be here for the next few games. And then in Brooklyn, we saw, again, him come in out of shape, and obviously not be the player that he probably could have and should have been. I don't necessarily see Kevin Durant sitting out, but I could definitely see him maybe doing something like that. 'Cause like he said, he loves to hoop. So I think he would still play, but giving it 100%, who knows?
Going off that James Harden point, we saw him quit on the season, and a lot of that was to do with Kyrie and the vaccine and everything. So I kind of want to talk about Kyrie a little bit. So he also requested to not requested a trade, but he wanted to get out of Brooklyn. But then he picked up his player option, surprisingly, and is looking to stay in Brooklyn. And he's just kind of flip-flopping all over the place. What do you guys? Well, we're gonna get into the trades and everything later. But what do you guys think is the best situation for Kyrie? Let's say they fire Sean Marks and Steve Nash, and KD stays. What do you think the best situation for Kyrie is? That?
I mean, Kyrie is just so unpredictable. I don't think there's really an answer to what he's gonna do this season. So say KD stays, I think Kyrie could either take that as a, let me get out of here so I can do my own thing, kind of like he did with LeBron on the Cavs.
Yep.
Or he could kind of accept the role of being kind of the next best player, again, like with LeBron on the Cavs. So, I mean, he's just so unpredictable. I don't really know which one of those he would pick.
That's the thing. Like, who knows? Like you said, he wasn't gonna play for the Nets, and then next thing you know, he's picking up his option. Like, who knows? He has made it, and sometimes I think he actually does this on purpose so that people can't really tell what he's gonna do. But right now, his only options, they say, are playing for the Nets or getting traded to the Lakers. He can't control that because the Lakers supposedly are the only team that want him. And I don't think they want to let him walk for nothing. The only thing is if they trade him to the Lakers, like, what are they going to get back? Is that something they want? And with Kevin Durant right now requesting this trade and putting all this pressure on him, are they going to risk trading Kyrie? Because if they trade Kyrie, then you never know. That's Kevin Durant's guy. Is he going to want to be there at all at that point? He might, maybe he does sit out. We don't know, but taking things away from him that he wants. Supposedly today, part of why he requested that trade, because an assistant coach that was a good friend of Kevin Durant, has been with him since OKC, was fired by the Nets. So are you going to, in essence, fire another guy that could potentially keep Kevin Durant happy and keep him there? I personally think the best place for Kyrie right now is the Nets. I think he owes it to Brooklyn to come in and play this season, stay healthy, keep his mind right. They have so much talent on that roster that if he has one good or great season, if they do, all can be forgiven. Obviously, everything wasn't his fault last year, but this is your year. There's no more vaccine mandate. You're able to play, so now come out and show that you're willing to do it. I think that's going to be the best situation for him.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. Let's move on to some off-season talk. First of all, let's look at their salaries. And off the bat, there's not really many salary issues. I would say the only one is Joe Harris. And if he comes back and he's like you said, he's like how he played against the Bucks last season in the playoffs. If he is kind of missing a lot of shots, he's not in shape, and he's just not his old self. He's making $17 million a year, so maybe they have to move off of him and trying to find another shooter or another player who can replace him. And then I would also like to say maybe Ben Simmons, who's making $30+ billion a year, and he didn't play a game last season for the Nets. So does he get moved? And there obviously, like you've seen, if you watch the past episodes, we pretty much have Ben Simmons as a trade option for every team. So,
he fits so many places, Alan.
So he could 100%. He could definitely fit in almost any system as that point guard facilitator role, or that elite defender. So if he plays for Brooklyn, I think that team would be the Nets would be a very good team, like Shelby said in the beginning. Starting with free agency, let's go with who they re-signed. They re-signed Nick Claxton, Kessler Edwards. They re-signed Kyrie to his player option. They re-signed Patty Mills, LaMarcus Aldridge, and they have yet to re-sign David Duke Jr. or Blake Griffin, but losing those two are not huge losses, and they'll probably re-sign Blake Griffin if nobody else offers him. They'll probably give him the qualifying offer. So they did lose Bruce Brown, though, who is one of the plus defenders on that team. Though he couldn't stretch the floor, I think that kind of hurts.
I think losing Bruce Brown, it hurts a little bit. I also think that at Bruce Brown's size, sometimes it hurts. When you got, obviously, Kyrie's going to get the bulk of the minutes.
In addition to losing Bruce Brown, the Nets also lost Andre Drummond, but they did sign T.J. Warren.
The thing about T.J. Warren is he's shown that he's a great player. Like in the bubble, he had 50-point game. But it's just a matter of if he's actually going to consistently play like that, or if that was kind of just like a one-time thing. So we'll see what he can do this season.
I think that, like Shelby just said, him having the 50-point game in the bubble, that shows that he has the ability to do that, which, if he can come off with that, not that he needs to score 50 points, but I think on this particular team with the talent that he has, he's going to be a fourth or fifth option. So if he can give them even, 15 a night, and every now and then give them 20, a couple times a year, give them 30, we know that that's there. So I think that's going to help. So you replace, like you said, you lost Bruce Brown. You replace Bruce Brown with T.J. Warren and Ben Simmons. I know who's on the roster last year, but who's playing this year. I think, though, especially now, for a guy like T.J. Warren to have Ben Simmons demanding respect on defense to have, and who's looking to give that ball up too. You have Kevin Durant demanding respect on defense. You got Kyrie demanding respect. Seth Curry, and Joe Harris. TJ Warren's going to have a lot of space, a lot of opportunities to score and knock down some shots.
For sure. I think the one thing with TJ Warren that has kind of plagued him these past 2 seasons after the bubble is his health. He hasn't been completely healthy for the past few seasons. So I think with more health and with, obviously, like Shelby said, more consistent play, I think that could be a good formula for success in Brooklyn. So let's move on to some trades, and then after that, Coach Curry has some ideas about coaching. So let's talk about the one accepted trade that already happened was the Nets got Royce O'Neal from Utah, and the Jazz got a second-round pick. And I'll just say this really quick, and then I'll let you guys go for it. I think it's a good signing for Brooklyn. Royce O'Neal's a pretty good perimeter defender, and they gave up very little to get him. So I think it's a pretty good signing for Brooklyn.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things that they were lacking last season was defense, and obviously Royce O'Neal brings that to the table. And if Ben Simmons ends up playing, both of them combined will bring the Nets defense rating up pretty high.
We came up with a bunch of mock trades for Kevin Durant, and let's just how do you guys want to proceed this? Do you want me to just go down the line or something, or do you guys want to talk about each trade a little bit?
Let's go down the line, man. You got we can pick out some of the ones that look interesting. I know there's one on there I want to mention, at least one. I think you probably, when it comes up, we'll know which one it is.
Yeah. So as we've reiterated, a lot of these trades are just kind of baseline trades, but let's just for the sake of our fantasy, let's just look at them. So first trade, the KD would go to this Philadelphia 76ers. The Nets would get Tobias Harris, Tyrese Maxey, Matisse Thybulle, and over at least three first-round picks, and the 76ers would get Kevin Durant. The next two trades are Kevin Durant going to Boston, and the first trade is an interesting one. It's the Celtics get Kevin Durant and the Nets get Jason Tatum. So it's a 1-for-1, and they probably have to add a trade exception in there for the mismatched contracts, but that would be a 1-for-1. And then the next trade would be Brooklyn gets Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, Peyton Pritchard, and at least one first-round pick, probably more than that, and the Celtics would get Kevin Durant. And then this next trade with Golden State, and it is the Nets would get Andrew Wiggins, Jordan Poole, Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, and at least one to two first-round picks, and the Warriors would get KD. And the next trade is with the Clippers. The Nets could get Paul George, Terrence Mann, Brandon Boston Jr., and at least 3 first-round picks. And then the Clippers would get KD. And then the Nets could get. I actually got this next trade from Nick Wright himself.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of made a little tweak to it. Instead of like Herb Jones, I think maybe Jose Alvarado or something like that. But the Nets could get Brandon Ingram, Larry Nance Jr., Jose Alvarado, and at least 4 first-round picks because, as Nick Wright always likes to say, that the Pelicans have picks to spare with the AD trade and the Drew Holiday trade, so they have picks to spare. And the Pelicans could get KD. And then the next trade, I think this trade is probably the most unlikely of the trades, as I don't think LA would accept this trade. But
this is it.
the Nets get Anthony Davis, Russell Westbrook, Talon Horton-Tucker, and 2 first-round picks. And the Lakers get Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. So I'll let you guys go for. I'll start with Coach, and then we can move to Shell. But so I'll start with you, Coach. What do you think?
I think the most realistic trade is the New Orleans trade. I don't think they're gonna let that slide with replacing Herb Jones with Jose Alvarado, but I think that's a great pick. That helps both teams out. It still gives you an established young star for the Nets. And on the New Orleans side of it, you get Kevin Durant. You still have you end up with basically 3 All-Stars. We can include CJ McCollum as an All-Star for this conversation. He's not an All-Star in that context, but for as far as a talent is concerned, he's an All-Star level talent. Yeah. And so I think that immediately makes them a contender that pulls Zion in and gives him some flexibility to sit out games if he needs to, because you still have CJ, you still have Kevin Durant. That immediately makes them a contender in the West. But that Lakers trade, I think that would be great. I would love seeing the dynamic of LeBron again with more floor spacing. We know LeBron was trying to take some time off, during the season, take some games off last year during the season. As he's getting older, he's going to be 37 this year, or is he going to be 38 this year? I can't keep up.
It's one of those. Yeah.
Yeah, he old either way. And to be able to take that pressure off, and we know that LeBron has been trying to hand the reins over to somebody else. He's done all that he can do. I think once he hits, he's been coasting anyway. Once he hits gets Kareem's record, I think he's going to be ready to kind of hand the reins over and make a push for playoffs, take some games off here and there. And I think those three, we already know that Kyrie and LeBron have a good dynamic. We know LeBron plays well with floor spacers. And so that would just add that dynamic to the team as well. The question mark would be what would happen with Russell Westbrook. I don't think that the Nets might take a chance on Anthony Davis because Anthony Davis, when healthy, we saw what he was the last time. I think he was healthy-ish before he went down in that Phoenix series. And he was still a dominant force. We saw the change it made when he went down. But with Russell Westbrook, what's he going to do? I will say, though, Russell Westbrook, if that was the exact swap, Russell Westbrook would be back on a team in lineups with shooting. Mm-hmm. He didn't fit with LeBron on the court the whole time, but to have a lineup with Anthony Davis, Joe Harris, Steph Curry, you still have shooting over there. So we'll see what happens with that. But I think he would be the question mark. Would they want to take him in that $47 million contract?
Just like an overview about all the trades. All of them, I think, they add a big defensive aspect to the Nets if any of these were to actually happen. I think they also bring some offense too, which would somewhat fill the gap of KD not being there. But obviously nothing's going to completely fill that gap because it's Kevin Durant.
KD.
But obviously the trade that stands out is the Nets-Lakers trade where superstars, both of them, go to Lakers. I think it'd definitely shake the league up for sure. I think it'd be fun to watch, but I don't know.
Can you imagine though a Nets-Lakers finals if they made that trade? First of all, if they made that trade, Christmas Day is gonna be Nets-Lakers.
Yeah.
Wouldn't surprise me if they changed opening night to be Nets-Lakers. I don't think they could change opening night at this point. Maybe. I don't know how that works. But a Nets-Lakers finals after making that trade, I don't know that Nets team will be able to beat some of the other big teams in the East. But oh man,
that would be.
It would be crazy.
Yeah, real quick, I just want to, if I'm the Brooklyn Nets organization and I have to trade Kevin Durant, I think, and the Warriors, if the Warriors offer me this trade for Andrew Wiggins, Jordan Poole, Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, and a first-round pick, I think I will take that deal because you get four young players. Andrew Wiggins is now just entering his prime. 4 young players and a first-round pick, and they're all offensively. I think Jonathan Kuminga has superstar potential. He's not a superstar yet, but I think has potential to be a superstar. Jordan Poole is going to be one of the best shooters and one of the best shot creators in the league. And Moses Moody, he's going to be a really good combo guard who can score and defend at a really high level. And Andrew Wiggins, we've seen what he did in the finals, so I think that combination with all their youth is a really good thing for the future, building towards the future. So if I'm Brooklyn, I'm doing that trade and then moving Kyrie maybe to LA for Russell Westbrook for that veteran leadership, or to Kyrie to a team for more veteran leadership or more young assets. So I think if I'm Brooklyn, I'm doing that trade, either that or the 1-for-1 for Jason Tatum. You get pretty much a younger, less refined KD, but a younger kind of KD kind of mold type of player nonetheless. Those are the 2 trades I'm doing if I'm Brooklyn. Coach had some coaching decisions and some coaching suggestions you wanted to make for Brooklyn. So let's move on to that.
Yeah, because that was the second scenario. Either they're going to trade Kevin Durant, or based on Kevin Durant's ultimatum, they're going to make some decisions on the coaching staff, some new decisions. So I picked 3 options. These are my coaching free agents, I guess. 3 options for the Nets coaching staff this year, head coaches. One is Frank Vogel. I know he was an easy target. He's an easy target right now. He was made the scapegoat of the Lakers debacle last year. Frank Vogel is not a bad coach. We saw what he did in Indiana. That was his first time as a head coach too, and he had them 7 of the teams he's coached, like 7 years out of his coaching tenure, and it hasn't been that long because his first team was with the Pacers. 7 of those years, his teams were in the top 10 of defensive rating in the league. 3 of those years they were first place. 2 other years they were third place. That's half his years he's been top 5 in defensive ratings. His teams are always good on defense. The Lakers a couple years ago, they won the championship. Everybody says that, well, it was the bubble, but before that, they were first place in the West. They were third in defensive rating in the entire league. The year after that, they were first in defensive rating. So it wasn't just the bubble. It was Frank Vogel, coaching his tail off defensively with that team. Obviously, LeBron helped in that. But I think with this team having the talent that it has, they're going to need a defensive presence. Ben Simmons helps with that. Nick Claxton's still back there protecting the rim, but to have a coach who can come and steal those defensive fundamentals or defensive strategies, I guess, or schemes for the team, I think that would be great for them. He would fit there. And now that he's coached superstars, obviously coached LeBron. He was instrumental in Paul George becoming the player that he was. He put the ball in Paul George's hands when Paul George averaged 6 points a game the year prior. And look what Paul George turned into. Another one, this is probably the most realistic pick, I think, Mike D'Antoni. Mike D'Antoni, who was actually on this team, an assistant coach, so he knows the guys. Probably knows a little too much about that organization, but I think Mike D'Antoni, his track record is one of a great offensive coach. Specifically, we saw what he is to offense, or what Frank Vogel is to defense. Mike D'Antoni is to offense. He's known for the 7-second or less transition offense. Back in Houston, they got up a lot of threes. I think he was instrumental in getting the most out of James Harden. We see him get the most out of players like Jeremy Lin. We've seen players like Daniel House who have been instrumental in that, have been making big shots and having their teams go on big runs, players who aren't really household names. And I think a core of Ben Simmons, Kyrie, KD will be able to push the pace. A guy like Ben Simmons will be great in the pick and roll and have guys to kick it out to or get to the rim. And then Sam Cassell, I think that's my third guy. Sam Cassell, he hasn't been a head coach in the league yet, but he has been an assistant coach since 2009. Right now, he's an assistant with Doc Rivers. He's like Doc Rivers' protege. He was with him when he was in LA coaching, and now he's back with them in Philly. He was a 3-time champion as a player, so he's been there. He was an All-NBA guy. He was an All-Star, so he's got that. He might have that respect from his players. And there was a clip that went viral a month or two ago of him working out with James Harden. He looks like he has respect to players, like he's not taking any stuff from his players. I'm not sure about the relationship he might have with Ben Simmons because he was on that Sixers coaching staff when all that went down. That would be my only question mark. And also, can he, as a first-time coach, come in and be ready to coach a championship or bust team, or maybe even if not bust a team with championship aspirations? I will say that the league has kind of been trending, though, in the last decade or so toward first-time head coaches going in to these teams with expectations. We saw Steve Kerr. That team, I know Steve Kerr gets credited for a lot of their success, Golden State, but Mark Jackson set them on that path, and they hired Steve Kerr to a team that had championship expectations, and he took them to 5 straight finals. Nick Nurse won as a first-year head coach. We saw the Cavs hired David Blatt for LeBron's first year back in Cleveland. And then David Blatt, then once he was gone, hired another first-year coach in Ty Lue, who then won a championship. We see Darvin Ham this year coming to Los Angeles, who always are going to have championship aspirations when LeBron is there. And even right now with the Nets, Steve Nash was a first-year head coach, first-year coach of anything. He's never an assistant or anything. With Brooklyn, a team that had championship aspirations. So that the league is trending towards hiring first-time head coaches. So those are my 3. I would love Sam Cassell to get a shot, but I think Mike D'Antoni would work best for that team.
Yeah, personally, I kind of like the Frank Vogel kind of direction because they need defense and they need that defensive presence. And I think Frank Vogel is strong in the locker room, and he definitely commands the respect of his players. So I think going that defensive direction, obviously you have Kyrie, KD, TJ Warren, all these offensive players, and just designing plays for them. KD, their talent kind of overcomes any like kind of offensive play calling lapses as we saw last year. They just had a bunch of ISO plays. So I think focusing more on the defensive end would definitely make them a more well-rounded team and a better championship team. But I can see D'Antoni's transition offense and his offensive mastermind kind of playing in that. All right, so that kind of just about does it for the Brooklyn episode. This was a rush hour episode. as we've seen with the big headlines all going around. And we definitely wanted to get Shelby on because we knew he was a great basketball mind, and we wanted to see how he did in front of the camera. So, and Shelby, you did not disappoint. You were great tonight. You might have been better than Fred. I dare to say that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Might have been better than Fred.
Might have been. I can't disrespect him like that. No, not when he's here. Not when he's not here. Not when he's not here. Let me shout out the gram really quick. Go to the Pick and Roll Podcast _ on Instagram. Follow that. And yeah, that's a wrap.